Today, let us discuss budgets, budgetary control, encumbrance accounting, how we are going to set up in Oracle Fusion General Ledger module. Budgets can also be set up for projects and they can be tracked. Project budgets are set up in PPM module, Project Portfolio Management module, which is a separate subledger. But expense budgets for expense accounts are managed from General Ledger module. Let us see one by one how to do this. There's some setups are required, and before doing that, let us briefly discuss about the introduction. Today we are going to discuss budgets, budgetary control, encumbrance accounting, what are the various encumbrance types, and what is the funds available formula, which is used in Oracle Fusion, and which is a generally accepted formula as well. Budgets, we all know, budgets are expenses are planned, which are translated into budgets, and if finance department or finance manager gets approval from the board, and they are uploaded in the system, any ERP system, whichever is used. These are budgets. Budgetary control is we have to implement controls in the budget so that we do not exceed the budgeted amounts. Otherwise, we may end up facing surprises in the organization. And encumbrance accounting. Encumbrance accounting is nothing but reserving the funds or budgets when you record purchase requisitions and purchase orders. Just think about a scenario. You are recording, if you have uploaded the budgets, you are recording the actuals in the form of invoices or journal vouchers. And similarly, you have to take care of purchase requisitions and purchase orders when you are recording them in the system, because these transactions also consume funds, and this will also impact the funds available position within the organization. There are mainly two types of encumbrances. One is commitment. This is commitments occur when you record a purchase requisition. And obligations. These occur when you issue a purchase order, or when you record a purchase order in the system. These are the main two types of encumbrances which are used and which are available in Oracle Fusion as well. Funds available formula is funds available is calculated in this way, like your budget amounts for a particular account minus actuals and encumbrances. This we will see in the system when you complete the setups and record a transaction. Next, from here onwards, system setups start. First setup is you have to set up the budgetary control. What type of control you need to implement? You want to implement in the ERP in Fusion, Oracle Fusion General Ledger module. Then you have to define a budget calendar. Then you have to define control budgets. This is where you control the budgets and provide access to the budget manager or budget officer or financial analyst. Then you have to give access to the user on the control budget. And again, then we will see with this we will be completing all the required setups, and we can go on record a transaction. Like we will see how to record a transaction and what will happen when there are no budgets, how the system will restrict you, stop you from posting the transaction. Then we will see how to upload the budgets, and then we will see reports like budgets, actuals, encumbrances, and funds available report, what are available in the system. Now let us see how to set up the budgets. The first setup in the budgetary control and encumbrance accounting is you have to go to budgetary control and encumbrance accounting, manage budgetary control. Here also in our sheet you can see these are the four major setups for setting up the budgetary control and encumbrance accounting. set up budgetary control. This is what we are doing now. We are going to enable budgetary control and encumbrance accounting. Budgetary control and encumbrance accounting is a functional area, and this is the option. Budgetary control and encumbrance accounting. And at enterprise level, there are 4 options. Ledger level, again you have to select the options, and business unit level you have to select the options. Let us see one by one. First option here is, first setup is budget to summary accounts in general ledger. Summary accounts that are used for budgetary control will be automatically generated in general ledger. It's self-explanatory. If you want to enable this. Synchronize hierarchy maintenance. Hierarchies are set up in general ledger chart of accounts. In case you want them, if you do changes in for example, say general ledger in any hierarchies, the same should be automatically maintained in budgetary control hierarchies as well. If you enable that feature, that will happen automatically. Additional budgetary control liquidation validation. Suppose you raise a purchase requisition, and purchase requisition, after approval it will be converted to a purchase order, and purchase order, against purchase order you do the receiving transaction of a goods and services, and after receiving you record a supplier invoice and process the payment. In case you raised a purchase requisition for one expense account and then you converted just to purchase order, in case if you are changing the expense account in purchase order, then budgetary control validation will fail at purchase order level if you enable this. Again, secure budget control budget definitions. Once we are done with this setup, we will be doing control budget also. After creating the budget calendars, you have to give access on your control budgets to someone in the finance department or budget department if you have one, and he may be a budget manager, that we have to give access. Secure by giving access. We cannot just give access to anyone just like that on budgets, because budget is a sensitive data. If your employees in the organization will be able to view the budgets, then they will start arguing why the department is having so much budget and why my department is not having that much budget. So the data must be secured. If you want to secure the data, you have to enable this checkbox. Now here you have to select the ledger, for which ledger you are going to do this setup. Sun primary ledger, and business unit is, which is assigned to this primary ledger, is Sun business unit. Yeah, enable budgetary control and encumbrance accounting. Sun primary ledger. Here you note down, enable budgetary control for the ledger and all sub general sources and categories. In case you want to set up some exceptions, you can do that. Enable encumbrance accounting. Encumbrance accounting is nothing but, as I said, reserving the funds at the time of purchase requisition and purchase order. When you enable that, you might have noted this, you have to provide the reserve for encumbrance account. Company, department, reserve for encumbrance is a liability type account. Department should be 00. Account, company value and account, you should have a reserve for encumbrance account in your chart of accounts with account type as liability, and you should select that account here. Say OK. Now, budgets, we are enabling at ledger level. You can also enable for projects. You can also enable both for ledger and project. In projects, you will set up budgets in PPM module. If you do that, it will validate against those budgets. Or if you want to validate, check funds both at ledger level and also at project level. Not also or, either or. Budgetary control, you have to enable if required. Otherwise, generally for expense accounts it is ledger. Project is not controlled from general ledger. If you are using PPM model, projects are loaded there in the PPM model. Transaction budget date falls outside of date range across all budget control budgets. In a control budget, you have to give the start date and end date. If the transaction budget date is nothing but transaction GL date, if it falls outside the date range which is set up in the control budgets, then the validation, budget check validation should fail. If you enable this, that will happen. this option, transactions without but project attributes. Project attributes is nothing but when recording a expense transaction like a requisition, purchase order, invoice for a project, then you have to enter 4 types of information, which is called POET information, like project code you have to enter, project organization, expenditure type, and period. If you select project, this will be active. Otherwise, if it is a expense account, this will not be active. Here it says for transactions without project attributes, don't have a matching chart of accounts based control budget. In projects, if you are recording a transaction for a project and without project attributes or a project information, then this means it will not have a matching chart of accounts to do a validation in the chart of accounts. Now, mapping between chart of accounts and budget accounts. You have to provide this. Automatically defaults for various segments in your chart of accounts. These chart of accounts are set up, and you might have seen when your budget is, the primary ledger is defined. That means your chart of accounts are also predefined. Budget segment, always use segment value from the budget data. You select this, don't select the second option. Use a specified value when not provided in budget data. Then in that case, you have to give a segment value here. But generally, we select this. Always use segment value from budget data for all the segments in your chart of accounts. Now, for business unit, here there are 2 more tabs are there. If you want to enable cash budgets, then you should enable this. Generally, cash budgets are not used in common. If you want, you can enable this, but we can discuss this later. In that case, you have to enable cash controls for your. You can check the funds. Your funds. When you are processing a payment or a payment process request in payables module. For now, I am not enabling this because generally this is not used. In my experience, I have not seen any organization using this enable cash controls. Budget control, journal exceptions, journal source and categories. You have enabled budgetary control for all the journal source and categories. If you can still go on to fine tune this, eliminate some journal sources or categories. For example, receipt accounting, cost accounting, by default it is disabled. Provided as exceptions, receipt accounting, cost accounting for all general categories. Here you can, for receipt accounting, you can see all types of categories. If you want to enable one, you can enable. Otherwise, you can, disable, you can disable. Everything is selected. This long list. Cost accounting. For this type of transactions, it is always advisable to select all the categories. You should not miss one, because if a particular transaction goes through that particular general category, then this exception will not work. What we can do, revaluation and opening balances. Similarly, closing balances also you can add. You can add something called closing balances, because generally when you do an implementation, you load opening balances, and when you close the period, sometimes if you can also record the closing JV when at the end of the year. In that case, closing balances also can be disabled. Generally, closing balances are not necessary. If you want, you can add closing journal. Oh, it says it already exists. Delete this. Yeah, it is here. Opening balances, closing journal, revaluation, cost accounting, receipt accounting. If you want to remove this receipt accounting and cost accounting, you can remove. Receipt accounting, cost accounting can be removed. I am removing. Revaluation, opening balances, and the closing journal. This can be exceptions where your budgetary controls will not apply to this type of transactions, like with this general source and for all categories under this general source. Now, business unit, enable budgetary control and encumbrance accounting for the business unit as well. Once you do that, you will see the business functions here. This one, default date rule, current transaction budget rule. This looks appropriate because system date you should use the budget date or GL date in the current transaction. Current transaction budget date should be used when you validate against the funds available. It cannot be system date or prior period transaction budget date. Prior period transaction budget date means if you are recording a purchase order, and when the system does check funds against that purchase order, then the previous prior related transaction will be your purchase requisition. You should not use the GL date for validating the funds, purchase requisition GL date. You should use the purchase order GL date. That is current transaction budget date. Budget date is nothing but the GL date. Here, requisition procurement. Here you have the functions. Procure to pay. Here this is nothing but all these transaction types relate to, business functions relate to procure to pay. Requisition, procurement is purchase order, expense is employee expenses, receiving against the purchase order, and payable invoices. Here enabled, all are enabled. Budgetary control, reservation point. For requisition and purchase order, only you have this additional columns, like what level you want to reserve the funds at the time of submitting the transaction or at that once it is approved. Sometimes it is better if it is submission level, because after it's a submission level, if you are not checking your funds, and after approval, final approval, if it is failing, then it doesn't, you are wasting a lot of time. It's better always to select a submission. Encumbrance accounting. Since we have selected encumbrance accounting, this should be yes for both. Expense for all these three. Reservation income and encumbrance accounting applies to purchase requisition and purchase orders. It doesn't apply to employee expenses or receiving or payable invoices. So you don't have those columns here. This can be further fine-tuned at a transaction type level. Here, WhatsApp by default, all the transaction types will be available. If you want, you can remove some of them. For example, for requisition, what you have non-project internal material transfer to expense. It is enabled there. Next, requisition project internal material transfer to expense requisition to supplier invoices. In our case, it should be requisition. In case if you are not using this type of transactions in your organization, you can remove this. I mean, you can say no here. If suppose you are using this, you have inventory module and you have multiple inventory organizations, then if you are transferring the material from one inventory organization to another inventory organization, those type of transactions, if you have in your organization, you should say yes here, otherwise you should say no. Similarly, for all business functions, you can fine-tune the transaction types. Project accounting business function. Enable budgetary control for all transaction sources and documents. If you are using project accounting, then this should be enabled. Since we have not enabled, it doesn't matter if you disable also. Budgetary control journal exceptions. Journal source. So for example, you have enabled for all journal sources and categories and all documents. Your budgetary control and encumbrance accounting. Then if you want to eliminate few transaction sources and documents, you can do that. For example, what you can do is, generally in some organizations, payroll expenses are not budget controlled. Then you can select this as an exception. Document should be payroll. Yes. This completes your budgetary control and encumbrance at budget level, at business unit level. What type of controls you have to set up? You should complete this setup as the first step when you want to enable budgetary control and encumbrance accounting. We can discuss in detail about encumbrance accounting. Encumbrance accounting is reserving the funds at purchase requisition and purchase order level. If you look at journal creation
I mean the page also. Balance types, you can see actuals and encumbrance. You can record actual JVs and also encumbrance type JVs. Encumbrance are necessary because uh, many organizations like government sector organizations, public sector organizations, semi-government organizations, some large companies in private sector, they use encumbrance accounting because you need to reserve funds or set aside from your budgeted amounts when you record a purchase requisition or a purchase order. Otherwise, if you are not checking funds and reserving funds at requisition and purchase order, then when you receive an invoice, you issue a purchase order to a supplier, and when he submits his invoice and when you record the supplier invoice, then at that time uh, purchase invoice validation should not fail because of insufficient funds. In that case, it is always better to use encumbrance account. And the feature works very well in Oracle Fusion. Earlier also in Oracle EBS also encumbrance accounting was a powerful feature in Oracle EBS. So we have done the first setup, budgetary control and encumbrance accounting, and we have enabled both. And one more thing is, if you don't enable encumbrance accounting initially and 2 or 3 years down the line, if you want to enable encumbrance accounting, then it's not possible. You have to run a lot of processes and sometimes they don't work well, and you may end up giving wrong funds availability position, and data corruption may happen. So it is always advisable to enable encumbrance accounting, even if you have a slight doubt that this may be required in future. uh, First step is done, setup is done. Now let us go back to our Excel sheet. We have completed this budgetary control setup. We have marked it as complete. Status is complete. Then the next setup is the budget calendar. Budget calendar. We need to set up budget calendars because budget calendars are used in control budgets. Now the point is, can we use the accounting calendar used in our primary ledger as a budget calendar or not? Yes, we can use. We can use the accounting calendar which was part of our primary ledger, or we can define new budget calendars. Let us see. In this case, what we are going to do is, we are in our setup as an example for your understanding, we are going to use two calendars. One is a monthly calendar, which will be our accounting calendar used in primary ledger, and we are going to define a new yearly budget calendar. We will do this now as part of this setup, and the reason is, for monthly calendar we will have a monthly advisory control. Our budgetary control level will be advisory for monthly control budget, and we define another control budget where we will have our budgetary control level as absolute. In case of advisory, what will happen is, system will allow the user to record the transaction, whether it is a purchase requisition or a purchase order or an invoice. It will allow the user to record the transaction, but it will show a warning that this particular transaction will exceed the funds available, but it will not stop you. In case the control level you selected is absolute, in that case, system will not allow the user to post this transaction or submit this for approval. Let us see how to create these calendars. Since we are using two calendars and one is already defined as part of our primary ledger setup, we will see how to create our yearly budget calendar. The task here is calendar, manage budget calendar. Should manage, not manage budget. Manage accounting calendars. Manage budget calendar is for something else. Manage accounting calendar. The calendar which was part of our primary ledger, which is Sun primary ledger, is, since we use a naming convention, it always starts with Sun, whatever it is, whatever setup you would have done. See, this is for 2024. We have a calendar defined. Here, see, you can see the dates from Jan to December. Then adjustment period. Want to see the calendar is defined for 2 years. For 23, this is the calendar. You can see the dates starting and ending with 23 here. We will use this as part of our budget control budget, a monthly control budget with the budget control level of advisory. And we have to define another calendar, the yearly budget calendar. We will also use Sun. Sun yearly budget calendar. See this checkbox, budgetary control only. If you enable this, all these columns will disappear. We will use this only in our control budget. You have to specify the start date. We will have only one period in our ledger because this is a yearly calendar. I mean, one period in the whole calendar, starting from 1st of Jan 2023 till 31st of December. Next, we have to provide the end date here. End date, we have given the start date only, month first. Year is 2023. How many periods you are going to have? One. You can even change the name here to yearly budget calendar, Sun budget calendar, same thing like this. Save and close. This completes your calendar setups. Like accounting calendar, you are using for your monthly control budget, and yearly budget calendar you are going to use for yearly control budget. Say done here. Now let us go back to our sheet, setup sheet. We have completed budget calendar. Let us change the status. Next setup is we have to define the control budgets. What we are going to do here is we are going to define two control budgets. One for a monthly control budget, which the control level will be advisory, and a yearly control budget with a control level of absolute. Let us see how to do this. Now, our task name, budgetary control and encumbrance accounting function area, task name is manage control budgets. Yes. Create. This is a screen. Just let us see what is available in the screen. You have to enter a name, description, budget calendar. You have to select source budget type. So this is the first control budget. So there is no, we cannot use this as a source, and other sources also will not use. Let us discuss one by one these columns. Control budget, always we have to use an convention. As I said, we will first set up a monthly control budget. Description, budget calendar we will use our accounting calendar used in the in the primary ledger, which was Sun accounting calendar from period Jan 23. Since 2 years certified, you can select December 24 as the last period. Source budget type. Here we are not going to, we don't have a source of other control budget. This is the first control budget we are going to define. We are not using EPM as a source. We are not using Hyperion. We cannot say no budget, so select other. Automatically this name will default here as a source budget name. Sun monthly control budget. Currency is USD. Default rate type for transactions, let us use corporate, which is the general practice. Control level here should be advisory. As I said, control level for each month will be based on advisory, but on a yearly basis the control level we will update it to absolute. Select the ledger, Sun primary ledger, budget manager, John David. You can also have tolerance as percentages. Tolerance percentage 5% or amount based tolerance is 100. System will consider whichever is lower. Allow budget increase adjustments. Budget also, you load the initial budget. After that you make changes to the budget, or you make revisions to the budget. To increase the budget you should enable this. To decrease the budget you should enable this. System to allow you to record such budget adjustments. Allow budget decrease adjustments below funds available. If you enable this, you can do if required. Budget decrease, you want to decrease the budget below the funds available also you can do. Allow override. In case of insufficient funds, you want to give access to somebody else to override the insufficient funds position and to proceed with the transaction, you can enable this. Otherwise, no. Now, budget segments. For what budget segments you are going to use this control budget? You have three segments in your chart of accounts. This will be listed here. We want to control at company, department and account level. That means when you plan, prepare and load the budgets in Fusion, you have to prepare the budgets at the combination of three, at department, at the company level plus department level plus account level. Some companies will not use department, but because the reason is it is not possible to allocate the budgets for each department. Some expenses it is not possible. That's why they remove department and they select only two segments, company plus account. In our case, we will select all the three. Budget segment, Sun company, Sun department, Sun accounts. You can also define trees and use them here. For parent accounts and account hierarchies, tree hierarchies, you can say, create them and use them here. Now, for this purpose, we will not use supplemental rules. You can create if you want to override something what is already mentioned here or set up here. If you want to override, you can create some supplemental rules. We will create one supplemental rule when we define the next control budget. Here also you can define, or in the next control budget, yearly budget also you can define. We will save this. Now it says not ready for use. You have to go to actions, select this prepare for use. If you prepare this control budget for use, transactions will be subject to the control of this budget. Do you want to continue? Say yes. You can note the number just to check the status of this process, whether completion status of the process if required. Otherwise, if you open this, not ready for use. Go back again just to check the status. Yeah, this will take some time. Yeah, the status has changed to in use. We will create our annual control budget. We will use the same name convention. Yearly control budget. Same description we will use here. Your budget calendar we will use our yearly budget calendar. There is only one period. Source type you have to use the control budget, monthly control budget. Source budget name. Yeah, Sun monthly control budget. Here we want to go into is absolute. You can even change this to advisory or track or none. This absolute, as I said, it will stop the user from proceeding with the transaction. Advisory, it will show a warning that this will lead to an insufficient funds position, but still it will allow the user to record the transaction and submit it for posting or approval. Track is it will neither stop nor show a warning, but behind the scenes it will be tracking the budget. If you select none, there will not be a budget control. You can only use for recording. Similarly, you can have the same tolerances here also, 5% on $100. Ledgers and primary ledger. Budget manager is the same guy, John David. Release budget for consumption immediately by selecting, or you can also select when source budget period opens. Budget segments. Budget segments, better to have use the same budget segments what we have used in your monthly control budget. Yeah, here we will define a supplementary rule. As an example, what we will do is, now what happened is you have selected here like all the companies for all this budgetary control or control budget for all the companies in your chart of accounts, all departments and all accounts in your chart of accounts. What will happen practically is for asset and liability accounts, you will not implement budgetary control. Even in some companies, they will not even implement budgetary control for revenue, but expenses are controlled, budget control, all expenses. Other than few expenses like payroll and some adjustment JVs, or opening or closing JVs, revaluation JVs, translation JVs, these kind of JVs, you can eliminate in your previous step. Since where we are going to cover that expense, for example, all account types you are selecting here. Suppose you need to remove asset type of accounts, liability type of accounts, and revenue type of accounts, and implement this only for expense type of accounts. In such a scenario, what you are going to do is you are going to define a supplementary rules. Let us complete this here. Some budget rule. To eliminate account types other than, I'll say, expense accounts. Same description you can copy. This is for if you have multiple business unit scenario, then you have to do the setups for all the business units. Your control budget or control level is for this you say none. The reason is This is mainly meant for asset liability and revenue type of accounts. Here the control level should be none. In that case, what you have to do, you have to remove expense type accounts from this. I mean the supplemental rule. How you are going to do that? Same will appear here. Budget segments, some companies, department and accounts. Additional segment filters you want. If you want, you can do that. Transaction attribute filters. Here, natural account type. If you look here, all your account types will appear here. You are going to remove this expense account type. With this action, what will happen is this control budget supplementary rule will apply to all account types other than expenses. What will happen to other than expense type of accounts? The control level will be none. System will not either give a warning or stop the user from proceeding with the transaction when the account type involved in the transaction is an asset or a liability or expense. Similarly, business functions you can eliminate for this type of controls. If you don't want to apply none control for this, you can apply that. Similarly, journal source. Okay. Yeah, we have completed this yearly control budget setup and also completed the supplementary rule setup. Save. And again, not ready for use. Select prepare for use. If you prepare this control budget for use, transactions will be subject to the control of this budget. We want to continue this. Note on the process ID. If you want to check the status or if you wait for a minute, this will be complete. Now you can see the status has changed to in use. This is how we have to define our control budgets. Let us go back here and mark this task also as complete. Now the next step is data access to users and control budget. Now let us see how to give access to the budget manager on our control budgets. This is the step what we are going to do now. Set up data access to users on control budget. What we are going to do here, assign budgeting roles to users and provide access. I think a role is already provided. Budget manager and budget analyst roles to John David. We will see how to give access on the control budget. Access need to be given on the control budget. Otherwise, the user will not be able to upload the budgets. Manage data access for users. This is a task. Add. Name is John David. Role. You can see here is already having these two roles, budget analyst and budget manager. Otherwise, you have to go to security console and provide these roles to different persons. In case you are following segregation of duties, of course you will not assign all these roles to one person. You will assign to different users in the finance department and accounts department. Security context is control budget and select that control budget here. If you remember, we have defined two control budgets and we will give access on the monthly control budget. That is enough. Because budgets are loaded in monthly control budget and not in yearly budget. Yearly control budget is to control the we added an additional layer of budgetary control, absolute control with yearly boundary for the expenses. We've already given, looks like if you look here, I think I've given this record with this combination of value already exists. What you can do is, if you want to look, okay, since it's already there, let us not worry about that now. You can revoke and add if you want to look. I can do that. What you can do is you can revoke and then add, just if you want to see how this is done. Since it's already there, since users with data access, let us revoke and then add. By that way, you will also know how to revoke your access, data access. Yes. Control budget. John David is having access. Who is the budget manager? Having the budget manager role. Select this if you want to revoke. Revoke data access assignment. Done. Done. You can add now. I'm just revoking and adding just for you to be familiar with this process. Done. Now you didn't get that error. This is how access is given, and we have completed this step as well. Assign budgeting role, it is already there. Budgeting manager role is there to John David, and we have given access on the control budget to John David. Our next setup is step open budget control calendars. How many calendars we are having? Calendars. We are using 2 calendars. Open monthly, both monthly and yearly calendars. These calendars we have to open in relation to the control budget. Let us see how to do that. First of all, let us see the calendars. Open the calendars and see the dates, start date, end date, and then let us see the process how to open the calendar. Task name is manage accounting calendars. Yes, manage accounting calendars. Yeah, Sun accounting calendar is a monthly calendar where you have all the 12 periods defined for 2 years, 23 and 24. Let us see what is this yearly budget calendar. Start date is, no, this is for 24, this one 23. Oh, we made a small mistake here. We have entered the start date as 31st December. So we have to open for this date, that is we have to open the December 23 calendar, budget calendar. Let us see how to do that. That's fine, there's a minor thing, we have noticed this. Otherwise, when you define the annual budget calendar, what you have to do is you have to start from 1st of January 23 till 31st of December 23. Budget calendar, you have to go here, menu, functional area of budgetary control. Manage budget period statuses. October 23. See here you are seeing only one calendar, since this is recorded in October, and in October there is only one calendar. If you change the date it should appear, otherwise yes. Then yearly control budget calendar. These two are our Budget calendars. How to open them? Click. Jan is open. What you have to do is you have to open. Let us do one thing. Let us open all, because if you want to load budgets, you have to open all monthly budgets. Available for budgeting. Open. Two statuses. Later, when you open, you will get some more options like close and all. 24 we are not opening since accounting calendar itself is not open. It will not allow you. Check again. 12 periods are open till December 23. Because we need to record a journal in December 23, we have opened till December. Why we are recording a journal in December 23? All the annual budgets we made a small mistake. We start date and date we have entered 31st December. That is why we are doing this. Yearly control budget. There is only one row. One day. See here, 31st December. That was a small mistake we have done. We'll change the status to open, save and close. If you want to check, yeah, status December 23 is open. What we required here, annual budget calendar, control budget calendar. This is open. Since there is only one row for December 31st, this is open. Done. Now we can record a JV. Let us first go and mark this as complete. These two tasks. Now for testing purpose, we are done with the setups and prerequisites of opening the periods and all. Now we can test recording a JV. How this budgetary control, whatever we have set up, how it's going to work. We will do that. Let us record a journal now for our testing purpose. How, what all setups we have done, how they are working, how they are behaving in checking the funds. Create journal. We will record a journal for $100 and try to reserve the funds, and also try to post. Batch name, description, period. It has to be December 23 because our annual budget calendar is defined for December 23. This is batch name, batch description, journal name, journal description. Accounting date should be 31st to December, since for the same reason like our annual budget control calendar is defined only for one day. In fact, it should be for from the 1st of Jan to 31st December, 31st of December, and I made a minor mistake there. That's fine. You can check the behavior like this. Sun Corporation, December. It's since you're recording an expense, we will record a marketing expense JV for $100. Since this is expenditure JV, we have to select department as well, and remember that our budget control is a combination of these three: company, department, and account. Marketing expense. Okay, this is our first JV line for $100. What will be our second JV line? Company, same company. Since we will use a bank account, the bank account need not have a cost center. Standard. Okay. 100. You can enter the description for your JV. That's fine. Now what I will do is I will try to post it. You can also save it and come here and check funds, reserve funds. You can do. We will do save it. then your check funds, reserve funds will be active. We will check funds. If it passes, we will reserve the funds. Let us see. Funds check failed. Batch status unposted. Why it has failed? Insufficient funds. For which calendar it is showing insufficient funds? Then yearly control budget. That is for annual budget, control budget. It is showing as insufficient funds. It has failed. It is not allowing the user to proceed further. In the same screen, fund status, all you can see failed also, passed warning. For our monthly control budget, what should have happened? There the control level was advisory. So there should be a warning. Whereas here it is not allowing insufficient funds. It is showing as failed. It will not allow the user to post this. We will see if there is a warning. Yes, advisory warning insufficient. In case there is no budget for annual, in case we have not defined the annual control budget, then with this warning we might be able to post. We will be able to post it. Since there is an additional layer of absolute control with an annual boundary, there is a failure here. Insufficient funds, some yearly control budget. Warning. Warning is for which control budget? Some monthly control budget. See, monthly control budget there is a warning, and yearly control budget there is a failure. Done. This is our testing. Now what is the action remedy for this? You if you even if you try to post it also, you will get the same. Is a process ID. It will take some time to posting status to update. What is the remedy for this now? Only remedy is we have to upload the budgets and then post this again. Check funds, reserve funds, and post this again. Selected for posting. Let us see what error. When you try to post, is it allowing to post? No, failed again. The budgetary control couldn't be complete for the batch. You must review details on the enter budgets page, or you can even just like what we did earlier, we can check. These things remain. Failed control budget. There is a failure. Funds check failure is there with insufficient funds for the control budget, yearly control budget, and there is a warning for which control budget? Monthly control budget. The reason is advisory control level for monthly control budget and absolute control level for yearly control budget. This is how it is working, and looks it is working perfectly fine. So we are done with the budgetary control. Only thing pending is we have to see how to upload the budgets.